Janavarla Girivaradari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Hare Krishna. Timarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshorunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamhayam Dadati Swapadhantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sakrachatam Sahaganha Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahaganha Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindan Vaneshwari Vashabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Bansha Kapatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Hevacha Patitanam Pavinebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. And Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter number 1, or did we read through that yesterday? Do we remember? Arjuna asked to be brought to the middle of the battlefield. I remember that. (26) 126. Let me pull it up on the screen here. Text 26. Tatra pashat stitan partha pitrin hata pitamahan acharjan matulhan bratrin putran patrin sakim stata. Swashuran suhridaschaiva sinayor huvayorapi. Translation. There Arjuna could see, within the midst of the armies of both parties, his fathers, grandfathers, teachers, maternal uncles, brothers, sons, grandsons, friends, and also his father-in-law and well-wishers, all present there. Text 27. Tan samikshya sakunteya sarvan bandhuna vistitan kripaya paraya vishto vishidhanhi dhamha bravit. Translation. When the son of Kunti, Arjuna, saw all these different grades of friends and relatives, he became overwhelmed with compassion and spoke thus. Text 28. Arjuna uvacha drishtvaimham swajanham Krishna yuyutsam samupashtitam siddhantimham gatrani mukam cha parashushyati. Translation. Arjuna said, "My dear Krishna, seeing my friends and relatives present before me in such a fighting spirit, I feel the limbs of my body quivering and my mouth drying up." I think we read this yesterday. I guess we'll continue. Text 29. Vepatuscha sharirhe me roma harshascha jayate gandhivam sramsyate hastat tvakchaiva parithayate. Translation. My whole body is trembling and my hair is standing on end. My bow Gandiva is slipping from my hand and my skin is burning. Text 30. Nacha shaknom yavastatum brahmati vajamhe manaha nivittani cha pashyamhi viparitani keshava. Translation. I am now unable to stand here any longer. I am forgetting myself and my mind is reeling. I foresee only evil, O killer of the Keshi demon. Text 31. Nachashreho nupashyamhi hatva swajhanam hahave nakangshe vijayam Krishna nacharajyam sukhanicha. Translation. I do not see how any good can come from killing my own kinsmen in this battle, nor can I, my dear Krishna, desire any subsequent victory, kingdom, or happiness. Texts 32 through 35. Kim no rajyena govinda kim bhokar jivatena va yesham harte kangshitam no rajyam bhokha sukhani cha tamhim he vastita yudhe pranham styaktva tanhani cha archarya pitara putras tathaiva cha pitamaha matulha swashura potra shyala sambadhina tata etana hantum hichami gnatopi marusudana apitrai lokyarajyasya eto kim nu mahikrite nihatya dartarastrana ka pritisya janardana. Long verse. Translation. O Govinda, of what avail to us are kingdoms, happiness, or even life itself, when all those for whom we may desire them are now arrayed in this battlefield? O Madhusudana, when teachers, fathers, sons, grandfathers, maternal uncles, father-in-law, grandsons, brothers-in-law, and all relatives are ready to give up their lives and properties and are standing before me, then why should I wish to kill them, though I may survive? O maintainer of all creatures, I am not prepared to fight with them, even in exchange for the three worlds, let alone this earth. Text 36. Apam heva shrayedasman hatvaitan attatayinaha tasmanarha vayam hantum Tartarastran sabhandavam swajanham hi katam hatva sukhinhasyam hamadava. Translation: sin will overcome us if we slay such aggressors. Therefore, it is not proper for us to kill the sons of Dhritarashtra and our friends. What should we gain, O Krishna, husband of the goddess of fortune? And how could we be happy by killing our own kinsmen? We'll do one more. Text 37 and 38. Two more. Yadyapyate napashyanti lobho pahita chetasaha kulhakshaya kritam dosham hitradrohe chapatakam kataham nagyeham hasmabhi paparhasman hivartitum kulakshaya kritam dosham prapashyad pirjanardana. Translation: O Janardana, although these men, overtaken by greed, see no fault in killing one's family or quarreling with friends, why should we, with knowledge of the sin, engage in these acts? Back to text 26. Text 26 translation. We turn this down just a little bit. Just a little bit. It's kind of sensitive. No. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Is that the main volume? The ones on the left will be better. Hare Krishna. That's okay. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you, Prabhu. Text 26 translation. There Arjuna could see within the midst of the armies of both parties his fathers, grandfathers, teachers, maternal uncles, brothers, sons, grandsons, friends, and also his father-in-law and well-wishers all present there. Purport. On the battlefield, Arjuna could see purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. On the battlefield, Arjuna could see all kinds of relatives. He could see persons like Bodhishrava, who were his father's contemporaries, grandfathers Bhishma and Somatata, teachers like Dronacharya and Kripacharya, maternal uncles like Shalya and Shakuni, brothers like Duryodhana, sons like Lakshmana, friends like Ashvatthama, well-wishers like Kritavarma, etc. He could see also the armies which contained many of his friends. Thank you guys for being here tonight, giving me a chance to purify myself by speaking wonderful Bhagavad Gita. First chapter is a bit intimidating for me to speak on because it's setting the scene of this great conversation between Krishna and Arjuna. So I'll work with what I can, and at any time, if someone has any comments, questions, doubts, please let me know and we can spend some time there. Text 27 translation. When the son of Kunti, Arjuna, saw all these different grades of friends and relatives, he became overwhelmed with compassion and spoke thus. Text 28. Translation. Arjuna said, "My dear Krishna, seeing my friends and relatives present before me in such a fighting spirit, I feel the limbs of my body quivering and my mouth drying up." Purport. Any man who has genuine devotion to the Lord has all the good qualities which are found in godly persons or in the demigods, whereas the non-devotee, however advanced he may be in material qualifications by education and culture, lacks in godly qualities. I was just reading about this yesterday in Nectar of Devotion. You can judge a man by his character. You can judge a tree by the kind of fruit that it produces. So if you have all such qualification in the eyes of this materialistic society, degrees or some sort of prestigious position within the work world, all of that is rendered absolutely useless if you don't have the real knowledge of who you are and why you're here. This is preliminary stuff. And upon figuring that out, you can understand, okay, self-realization and God realization go hand in hand. To be fully self-realized, you are a part and parcel of Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. So those two go hand in hand. And if one has not arrived at that conclusion, then it's to be understood that if they're not moving that direction, then they must redirect where their priorities are at in life. We have such short time in this world. Prabhupada makes the point so many times that Parikshit Maharaj had 7 days to hear Bhagavatam. We don't know that we have 7 minutes, and yet we're still so averse to hearing from Srimad Bhagavad Gita, from Srimad Bhagavatam. We'd rather be doing anything else, serving our immediate senses through some sort of mundane sense pleasure that it captivates us like anything. We're so conditioned, and we can't see the glory of these books that are in front of us. We can't see the glory of the devotees that sit in front of us. We are so adverse to coming to spiritual life, depending on who you are and where you're coming from, right? I mean, because in the West, we're conditioned in a way that's completely different than those, say, who are coming from India or Nepal or Russia, or given the time, place, and circumstance, we relate to ourselves through these borders of nation or gender or race. These are temporary designations, and no matter how much progress we make on the path in those designations, in fighting for the equality of all designations or this or that, this is temporary gain, and therefore it's to be considered, at best, constructive for society, but falling far short of the supreme dharma, the supreme occupation, which is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service is haituk yapratiyata. Unmotivated, uninterrupted. This is the completely way to satisfy the self. If one is not on that platform or aspiring for that platform, then they are grossly mistaken as to which direction to walk in life. And we hear that ultimately all occupations are meant for rendering service to the Lord and obtaining the ultimate liberation of going back to his abode, of which there is no return to this material world. Upon seeing the beauty of that spiritual world, never do we descend back here again. So any other kind of endeavor that's not provoking attraction for the message of the personality of Godhead, it's simply shrama evihi kevalam, useless waste of time, useless waste of time. So therefore, all of these people with so-called good qualities, advanced in material education and culture, by so many people's estimations, these people are advanced, are on the progressive path of life. But really, as one attains more respect, or some sort of higher parentage, through family achievement, or great opulence, or bodily beauty, or high education, these actually bar one. Actually, the qualification to making spiritual progress, to obtaining real jnana, real knowledge, is that they lose interest in material paths of progress. And when such a person does that, he can approach the Lord with sincere feeling. So this is a prayer that Queen Kunti makes. That's one of my favorites to remind myself of, that the Lord, he can actually very easily be approached, but only by those who are materially exhausted, and not by those who are looking for some sort of name, fame, prestige. It's not such a cheap thing, this spiritual life. So for a person like myself who's so superficial, I must remind myself constantly. As such, continuing here in the purport, as such, Arjuna, just after seeking his kinsmen, friends, and relatives on the battlefield, was at once overwhelmed by compassion for them, who had so decided to fight amongst themselves. As far as his soldiers were concerned, he was sympathetic from the beginning, but he felt compassion even for the soldiers of the opposite party, foreseeing their imminent death. And so, thinking, the limbs of his body began to quiver and his mouth became dry. He was more or less astonished to see their fighting spirit. Practically the whole community, all blood relatives of Arjuna, had come to fight with him. This overwhelmed a kind of devotee like Arjuna. Although it is not mentioned here, still one can easily imagine that not only were Arjuna's bodily limbs quivering and his mouth drying up, but that he was also crying out of compassion. Such symptoms in Arjuna were not due to a weakness, but to his soft-heartedness, a characteristic of a pure devotee of the Lord. It is said, therefore, Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavat yakinchanha. Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavat yakinchanha. Sarvar gunhas tatra samhasate suraha. Harava bhaktasya kuto mahat gunha. Manoratinha satidhavato bahihi. One who has unflinching faith, unflinching devotion, for the personality of Godhead, has all the good qualities of the demigods. But one who is not a devotee of the Lord has only material qualifications that are of little value. This is because he is hovering on the mental plane and is certain to be attracted by the glaring material energy. We have to ask ourselves the question, what is the value of a prolonged life which is wasted and experienced by years in this world? It's far better to have a moment of full consciousness, that which might give us a start in searching after our supreme interest. We have to face that every day, and especially in our japa period. And what else could I be doing? I could be doing so much with my time. I could be sleeping. It's 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. I'm chanting, I'm doing this thing that I have no taste for. I have no desire to be here to do this, but still we must find the will in our hearts to stick it out and to see that what I'm preparing for is that final test of my life, which comes at my last breath. If we have any kind of faith at all in what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, then we should chant despite wanting to or not, because we hear yam yam vapi smaran bhavam Tyajantante kalevaram tam tamavaiti konteya saratad bhava bhavataha, that according to one's state of consciousness, that last moments of their life, that state they attain without fail. And as I mentioned already, we have such little time, an unknown amount of time. It's undisclosed to us. So we must take every step in stride and see that it matters greatly. There's so much weight to every single little decision that we make, every direction we turn. And we shouldn't let this cripple us, but we should use it as an impetus to push us forward and get us more enthused about surrendering to Krishna, because it's really just that. There's nothing that we ourselves can do other than surrender to Krishna, to allow him to be the supreme controller that he is, rather to give him the facility to work through us as his instrument. We're nothing but instrumental manifestations. It's just, to think that we have any kind of independence is a facade, an illusion. We're completely and wholly dependent on the Supreme Lord, and if we're not serving him directly, then we're serving him in the form of time, So the atheist may say, I don't believe in God. Okay, well, you believe in time, right? And we have to ask ourselves, what does God mean? We can at least all agree, the whole of society, the whole of the world should agree that a quality of what God might have is one that no one can surpass. And no one can surpass time. No one has any kind of dictation over how much it takes from us. None whatsoever, actually. And actually, it's imperceptible. We hear this in 13th chapter of Bhagavatam. Evam griheshu saktanam pramataram tarihaya atyakramar avigata kala paramadishtaraha. That imperceptible, you can't even see it, imperceptible time, which is insurmountable, it passes over us, imperceptibly passes upon us. It's moving in such a way that we can't even see it because we're so absorbed within our material needs, within our conditioning. It's specifically said in that verse that one who is too attached to family affairs, always engrossed in their thought, for them, insurmountable time overcomes them. Whereas the devotee, time is actually his friend. We heard this from Maharaj recently. The devotee, it's better he dies sooner rather than later. He's aware of his position and where he's going. He has full faith in Shastra. So when he hears something like Sarva Dharmam Prityaja Mamekam Sharanam Vrja Aham Tvam Sarva Papebro Mokshaya Shami Ma Shuchaha, he can understand I have nothing to fear at all. I'm surrendered at the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. All of my sinful reactions are completely, no matter what I've done, it's okay. No matter if I go to hell, no matter if I go to heaven, if I keep taking births perpetually over and over, and it doesn't matter as long as I remember the Lord, as long as I can serve him, serve his devotees. It doesn't matter. However, for the atheist, for the godless person, it's best they live a long time. Because, well, where they're going, one wouldn't want to rush to. We hear descriptions in 5th canto of Bhagavatam of some of these hellish planets. It's no fun. It's no fun. Better to live a long life, get my pleasure where I can, and that's just total ignorance, putting off the inevitable. But that's the mentality, just complete ignorance of what one should do and what standards one should rise to make their life mean something. Following the rules and regulations, this is the bare minimum that Srila Prabhupada has given us. No meat eating, no intoxication, no illicit sex, no gambling. This is just basic stuff. These are the 4 pillars of which all other sin rests upon. And when we refrain from these 4 illicit activities, we begin taking steps to the perfection of our life. Also considering what he did ask us to do as well, which was chant 16 rounds, to devote 2 or 3 hours a day to chanting the holy name of the Lord. It's not really asking so much. So, following this program, Srila Prabhupada, it's a great opportunity we have to get out of this very precarious predicament, this corner we backed ourselves into. We actually have nowhere to go but forward. We're so fallen. All we can do is take steps forward for wise. Continue on in the purport. But one who is not a devotee of the Lord has only material qualifications that are of little value. This is because he is hovering on the mental plane and is certain to be attracted by the glaring material energy. Text 28 translation. My whole body is trembling and my hair is standing on end. My Pogan Diva is slipping from my hand and my skin is burning. Purport. There are 2 kinds of trembling of the body and 2 kinds of standings of the hair on end. Such phenomena can occur either in great spiritual ecstasy or out of great fear under material conditions. There is no fear in transcendental realization. Arjuna's symptoms in this situation are out of material fear, namely loss of life. This is evident from other symptoms also. It's said that, real quick side note, that actually envy is the cause of all fear. So as I'm reading this, that there are two kinds of standing on the hair on end. What I'm understanding is that such phenomena actually occur from the same source, but one is just simply a shadow of that spiritual ecstasy. In the same way that kama, lust, is actually the same energy as prema. It's distorted, right, by the conditioned living entity. There's a tree, this is talked about maybe 15th chapter Gita. There's a tree situated on the water of desire. We're looking at the tree, that's reality. But when we dip into the reflection, that is the illusion. But on the water of desire, that's how if we purify our consciousness, that means we purify our desire. It means we are in accordance with our eternal constitutional position as a servant of God. But when we're in illusion, we're out of envy, we're in enviness, ultimately, of Krishna, out of his supreme proprietorship over all that might be, over his supreme lordship, over his supreme friendship. These are the material pangs of misery. Moktaram yagitapasam sarvalokameshvaram suhardam sarvabhutanam gyatvam shantim rishtati. That realizing those three things, that which I am not, but that which the Lord is, we can actually free ourselves from all material pangs of misery. That is the material peace formula for getting out of this situation that we're in, for purifying our desires and going to the eternal reality. Asatom ha sad gama, tamasim ha jyotir gama, mritom ha amrita gama. Go to the eternal reality. Leave illusion. Stay out of darkness, go to the light. Stop taking material bodies, become immortal. This is done through recognizing our proper position in relationship to the Lord as a servant of his servant. Stop taking material bodies. It's only envy that's keeping us here in this world. So these two symptoms I'm reflecting on, they all come from the same source, but one is simply just perverted. The other one is in actuality. Yes, Prabhuji.
You said fear comes from envy. Can you elaborate on that?
You said what?
You said fear comes from envy.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that?
Can I divulge on that? Yeah, all envy leads to fear. All fear is a result of envy. It's due to, I heard it put today like this, that we come to the material world because we're working on our God project. We have this idea that we can enjoy too. That actually everything is centered around me, or it should be rather. And therefore, let me come here and let me enjoy to some great level, and let me imitate the supreme enjoyer, Krishna. That's envy. That's envy. And ultimately, as long as we're envious of Krishna, we're potentially envious of every single part and parcel of Krishna. Right? If we're envious of the whole, then there's a potential to be envious of every single other part of him. So when we're envious of any kind of part of him, it's just look to the source of where that's coming from. It's coming from Krishna. And when we're envious, we're looking to dominate over someone else. That's the nature of this whole material world, is we're just trying to get one over the next guy. And we're always in fear to lose our position. And we're so proud of what little whatever it is that we've surmised to obtain. The poor man, a pauper is proud of his penny, Even a homeless man on the side of the street can be so proud of this penny. This pride is the killer of one's advancement in spiritual life. And it's the pride of a devotee that inhibits him from taking any steps forward. Yeah, if we're envious of Krishna, enviousness is a quality of our material situation here. And another quality of our material situation here is that everything is temporary. Everything comes and everything goes. So if we're in enviousness, then we're subjected to the temporary benefits and inauspicious dealings that plague us. So we'll always be hankering and lamenting for what we have or for what we might lose. So like that, I mean, that's the greatest fear, because if I'm identifying with my body and with what's in relation to my body, what it claims to have, my mother, my father, my car, my money, if I think these are actually mine, that I am a dependent person, what happens when I lose all that? I'm going to be scared. I identify with that status that I've attained, that person that I've put everything into. It's a misplace of our energy. Because actually, if we just focus on Krishna, if we just water the root of the tree, then the whole tree is nourished. We can have all those things. It's not that those things are inherently bad, that I shouldn't have a car. I should renounce my relationship with my mother. I should, say, no, just turn towards Krishna in relation with all those things, and you'll be okay. Then you can, you don't have to give up anything. That's what's so nice about this yoga practice. So that's what I would say. I'm sorry I can't divulge so much in depth. Did anything come up for you as I was speaking? Yeah.
How does that relate to that?
If you're afraid of a mosquito? Well, I mean, it's an interesting question. If I'm afraid of a mosquito, it's probably because I'm worried it might bite me. I'm probably really in anxiety about being bitten because I have some sort of misidentification with my body, some sort of misunderstanding that, I have to preserve this body, It's up to me. Nothing can happen to this body, as if time isn't just going to dry it out anyway. So there's always some sort of, where there's illusion, there's misidentification with our body, So I kind of go straight to that. Yeah, if we're looking at someone, when we're envying them, it's because there's something that we see in them that we'd like to see in ourselves, but we don't. At least that's one cause of envy. Maybe I don't look at a mosquito and want to be a mosquito, but generally speaking, when we have envy amongst our peers, right, it's because actually there's some kind of subtle appreciation for something they have that I'm frustrated about not seeing in myself. Really, the seeing that person as simply a vessel at which Krishna is manifesting himself through to do his own business, that is the solution to all envy. Because if we can look at someone and just appreciate them for how they're allowing Krishna to manifest through them, that's Krishna conscious. That's looking at someone and genuinely appreciating them for where their qualities are coming from and for their ability to just surrender to the supreme. And that's intelligence. We're glorifying that person's intelligence. We're glorifying the opulence and the beautiful potencies of the Lord, that's the cure to all envy, is understanding that Krishna is the supreme proprietor, the supreme enjoyer, supreme friend. Like that. So we'll wrap it up there, unless there's any other questions. But like I said, this is a rather difficult chapter for me to speak on. So I thank you for gritting your teeth and bearing your way through it. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.